monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings. Join the Xplorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Good evening and welcome to Xplorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 12, I believe. I'm kind of not sure anymore, but you don't watch us. You don't watch us for our math skills, honestly. So tonight we're going to kind of sound like the old men that we all dread talking to. The
old back in my days, we did this sort of thing kind of guy. Yeah. So tonight we will discuss our thoughts on if paranormal research is even research anymore, or have we all been led to more entertainment? And we'll talk more about that in a bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this really stems from a conversation you and I had probably it was about a week or so ago, that a lot of these groups are getting away from being scientifically viable data collection points.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not passing judgment on groups, we're not passing shows, manufacturers of this equipment and stuff like that. It's really just exploring what the equipment is, what it's doing, and is it really scientifically usable as data collection tools for paranormal investigation.
Right. Yeah. Well, before we get into the show, I guess I should go through my usual agenda and just remind everybody that if you want to get in touch with us, we have a bunch of different ways. You could reach us at our website, www.xplorersgroup.com. You could also reach us on Twitter at Xplorers Group, and obviously on Facebook, where you're seeing us now, facebook.com/Xplorers. I cannot get that right. And you could also comment live in the comments section under the show on Facebook. BeLive has it set up pretty nicely, so that way we could comment back to you with the through the interface here in the show. So feel free to comment anything you want to add to this. Tonight's show is kind of more or less just a freestyle, open conversation, if you will. I'm not feeling very well tonight, and I've been having some connectivity issues with my internet. I swear I'm about ready to pull my hair out with my internet provider, but we're probably not going to have a very long show tonight. Like I said, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, and we just really we're talking about this, like Chad had mentioned, just about ghost hunting in general, and we were kind of talking about just some of the equipment that people use, and again, just to reiterate what Chad said, I don't want to we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or make these manufacturers feel like they're making something that isn't that great, but
we're not even saying this stuff doesn't work.
We're just raising the question. As you watch a lot of the more popular shows, they're bringing more and more pieces of equipment in that they're trying to use to generate proof of the existence of spirits, or the afterlife, if you will. And a lot of the equipment that we're seeing, and we'll talk more about each individual piece, it kind of makes you scratch your head and wonder, are we straying from the scientific aspect of collecting data or evidence and trying to go into more almost novelty realms, or it's more for fun, kind of like how Parker Brothers made the Ouija board. Now, granted, that's a whole other topic, but a lot of these devices. Now, again, the whole purpose of being a paranormal investigator is to collect data or evidence to prove the existence of a spirit, a ghost, an apparition, whatever you want to call it, or whatever you're going after, is you want to prove scientifically that this thing exists. Now, there's a lot of devices that are used in paranormal research that have they're more black and white. Their uses are very straightforward. And Chad, I think you coined it best before, is you're not scrutinizing the device, you're more scrutinizing the evidence or the result of what it captured. Whereas a lot of the newer devices that are coming out, they're a lot more technical. Yeah, because their inner workings aren't as simplistic as some of the other devices were. Like a lot of them, well, where do we want to start before I start getting into this? Do we want to start with one in particular? I know we were talking about the SLS cameras in particular, and I'm going to let you kind of take the bull by the horns with that one, because you dove into that a little bit more than I did. But I think that'd be a good starting point. So we'll start with the SLS cameras that you're seeing a lot on. And we're not, like I said before, and Chad had mentioned it too, we're not bashing any of these shows, we're not bashing any other investigators, and we're not bashing the manufacturers. We're just trying to raise the question, are these pieces of equipment really collecting scientific information, or is it more either novelty, commercial, or is it just not really doing what you think it's doing? So we're going to start with the SLS camera, and Chad, you could take that away, buddy.
Well, before I get on to the SLS camera, today I had the pleasure of attending a World War II discussion. And if anybody of the people that know me know how much I love history, I actually got to sit and talk to a veteran of World War II. He joined in 43 or 44. He was actually old enough to join the military. So it was a very interesting conversation that I got to have today. And I would just, I would say to anybody, if you're given the opportunity to go somewhere and they have these, World War II discussions, Civil War discussions, even just local history discussions, I would ask that you guys go and definitely take an hour out of your day and go and sit and listen. It was so informative. I learned so much stuff today. I even got to present a little bit while I was there. So, I'd just like to say thank you to the group that put that on today. Now, getting into the SLS cameras.
Nice little side story there.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get that in because it was a very interesting thing, especially for me, who is...
I know how much that means to you, so that was really cool, especially that you got to present. That was awesome.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the Explorers take on World War II. I was going to coin the phrase and wear my shirt, but I didn't have time to bring it. But to get into the SLS camera, it's basically a camera that is a motion capture camera. Okay. And basically where it starts from is the Xbox 360 Kinect Cam. And, the Kinect Cam itself is considered, in video gaming, considered, state of the art, top of the line. The developers gather, they created a system here, which was a $30,000 cheap end, motion capture camera to $200,000 motion capture camera. Somehow they figured to develop one for $120,000 or $120 on $120,000.
Jesus.
Yeah, I just jumped a couple of zeros in there. And so what the actual camera does is it captures motion, and I'm actually reading this from an original, press release on the camera.
Right.
It captures data regarding motion and actual moving things in real life scenarios, processing all this data using a special artificial intelligence machine learning algorithm. Algorithm is going to come up a lot today. Allows the Kinect to map visual data it collects to model representing people of different backgrounds, including age, height, gender, body type, clothing, and more. This is one way, that kind of is going to be one of my questions in a little bit here. The Kinect brain itself is considered a secret, and it's basically stored in a secure facility. And it's basically an algorithm that learns from observation. It interprets skeletal structure movement and maps it into this computer's brain, basically. And again, this is in a secured facility, and it is a big server farm that Microsoft actually has this in.
Not to cut you off, but all I keep thinking is my CPU is a no-net processor, a learning computer. the T1000.
Well, I mean, really, it could be Skynet. Who knows?
You never know. It's the beginning of the end.
Now, here's one of the things that is kind of interesting about the original Kinect Cam version is it analyzes the data every 30 seconds.
Okay.
So that's one thing to also keep in mind as you were going here. And, again, like I said, this is something that started out as a video game technology.
Right.
And now through, the ingenious ability of the creators of this, SLS camera. All the SLS camera is a Kinect cam and a tablet that are connected, a Microsoft running tablet. So you're getting into, with it, you have, a built-in microphone.
Right.
It's using ultraviolet light, infrared. It's, so it's sending and it's mapping.
Right.
What we're seeing on a lot of these shows, and even not just shows, but groups that you're seeing pop up, they're using these cameras on investigations, and it does map a lot of things. It is tracking some different elements, and it does track temperature and stuff like that. But again, there's an algorithm.
Right. So there's something in that device that's pre-programmed to do certain things and to look for certain things. And before I lose my train of thought, I wanted to bring this in to go along with what you're saying. So you have basically a camera for a gaming system that has the algorithm, that has the brain, that the processor, that already has predisposed information in it, right? So, and though they're used a lot for the dance games, the athletic games like running and all that stuff, which it always made me kind of laugh, because when you're watching these shows, right? Just an example, Paranormal Lockdown. I love that show. I really do. I like Nick and Christina. I love watching that show. But the one episode, they were using one of these kinetic cameras or SLS cameras, and there was one of the stick figures, the mapped out figures. Now, my thought immediately was, this thing is looking for certain points to generate this stick figure. And it also looks for another physical body to map out. So when you think of a video game, right? So this already has pre-installed and predetermined features built into it, into that brain, because it is a gaming brain. You see a stick figure that just pops up out of nowhere. And what does it always look like it's doing? Running or dancing in the corners. Standing there, moving around, the hell is it doing? Is it dancing? Is it jumping? So just let's say hypothetically that it's running, let's say Dance Revolution, just off the top of my head.
Because that's a game you play often.
Regularly, yeah, that's how I got this body. But so they're playing Dance Dance Revolution, right? So the software or the algorithm is running that application. So the camera is on a blank room. There's nobody in there, but you have this stick figure running around in the corner. So it's the competitor that you're dancing against, the CGI or the AI character.
Yeah.
Right. So that's there, ready to go. He's dancing. He's moving around. He's doing his, where they do the whole, it's waiting because it's part of that program, but it's not it's not the full software of the game. It's just the kinetic portion.
Yeah.
So it's already mapped out that character. Then all of a sudden, oh my God, Nick comes into the room. Oh, well, it's mapping out Nick, but it doesn't have the software to phase him out. Right? It doesn't have the game, but it's mapping Nick out, and all you're seeing is the I guess the kinetic technology from the algorithm of that or the technology of that camera projecting onto the screen what it would have been either created a character or just mapped Nick out so it could follow him in relation to the virtual opponent.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you got to realize one of the things this Kinect camera is doing is sending out 9 million data points per second.
Right.
So it's looking for somebody.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's already looking for a human figure, a torso, whatever, And the thing also maps a range of 16 foot.
Right.
So it's shooting out 9 million data points over a certain diameter that is trying to map up to 16 feet.
Right.
You're not, you think about a lot of the things that you end up looking at, sonar and all these things where there's these weird contacts, be it Loch Ness or something like that. And they come back later and they're not there, but then they really examine the equipment and they're like, oh, it was, a malfunction in the, this processor. It wasn't sending a full signal. So therefore, when it got out so far, it dissipated so much and it looked like an object. Right. The thing that gets kind of questionable again is, like you said, is the AI already in that system and it's searching for AI, like to put AI against you? One of the things that gets me about it, honestly, is if you ever watch the shows or you watch these groups that post their videos with doing it, or if you actually watch Huff Paranormal, I'd sent you that link.
Yeah,
He bought one to test it out.
Right.
And he turns it on and it's doing all its mapping and its dimensioning and all this stuff. And all of a sudden across the room, when he's sitting there for a little bit, he's like, is there anybody here? And all of a sudden a stick figure pops up, 6 foot up the wall, there's a stick figure.
Right.
But it's a stick figure that in dimension compared to the room, like I said, it's 6 foot up a wall, but the stick figure is only 4 foot, 3 foot tall.
Right.
And it's doing the robot. Its arms going like this, and it's
it's almost like it like you said, it's putting out these points. And is it just almost like the case of pareidolia or whatever you want to call it, where the brain sees things in certain images, or you see something in the clouds? Is the computer doing it? Yeah. Because a lot of times you're in a low light situation, and 99.9% of the time the quality is very grainy because the ISO is set higher, or it's at an infrared setting or something like that. And you're getting a lot of grainy distortion. So is the camera that is always going to be looking for reference points of human-esque reference points, is it connecting dots out of the video noise and just projecting something?
Well, think about it.
Like we said before, is it the algorithm just shooting out a character because it has a preset game or something.
Yeah. Well, even just to add to what you were thinking and what you were kind of getting at there, if you think about it, who created the algorithm? Who created the programming? A human.
Yeah.
The algorithm is capable of learning,
Right.
but a human created it.
Right.
We have phenomena, matrixing, pareidolia, all these phenomena where our brain, which is a learning, processing human computer,
right,
is trying to make a picture out of something that isn't really there. Is trying to put a face or trying to put a reference point. Yeah.
Right.
So now you are shining 9 million data points out every second, and one of them doesn't return as quickly as the rest.
Right.
Does that start to pick up and the algorithm say, oh, well, the algorithm knows a human at 16 foot takes this many seconds to get back to us.
Right.
Or at a different range, it's going to take a shorter amount of time or a longer amount of time. So all of a sudden it gets an interrupted signal and it starts to map something.
Right.
Because you see it at times where it'll start to map something, it'll say anomaly detected, it'll turn colors, and then all of a sudden there'll be a stick figure.
Right.
But at other times it says anomaly detected, will turn colors, and nothing will ever pop up of it.
Right.
It'll just go away. So could it be an interrupted signal or, a surface? I don't know exactly how the light end of it works. Like, if the surface is warmer or colder, does it interfere with the signal? If it's, a more porous surface, stuff like that.
Now, is that designed to pick up like a heat signature?
Now, I don't think it's not designed necessarily to pick up heat, but it can differentiate body types and objects.
Based off movement, though, because it's breaking those points, those lines that are projecting out, and you're physically breaking them, whereas an inanimate object, it's just going to continuously bounce back the same pattern, so it's not going to know to pick up on that. But if you're moving physically and you're breaking all these points, those matrices are going to be mapping you out.
Yeah.
So I think back to what we were talking about before is that grainy noise. Because how many times have you done evidence review? But no, when we're reviewing, well, in a past life I did it. But when you're doing evidence review and you're looking and you're watching over all that video, how many times do you sit there and you're like, oh my God, I swear I just saw something, but it was just a little bit of noise, a disruption in the pattern, the patternization and stuff, and in the grain, in the noise of the video, and you're like, oh no, it wasn't what I thought. It was pixel distortion or something.
Well, a lot of that is actually a lot of times that's what I look for on videos, just because nobody's ever really captured that night vision or infrared scale great image of a ghost. So I always do kind of tend to look at stuff like that. It's interesting, what is it actually doing? But with it, it's hard to say because a lot of times it almost seems like that microphone, the algorithm, and all is working in some kind of pattern.
Right. Well, Joyce had posted a comment in our feed here. Mm-hmm. She says, do you think the programmer could get feedback from the games that is stored in a master file or chip? And that's exactly what we're trying to figure out here, Joyce. That's one of our big questions, like Chad's saying about the algorithm, the processor, the thinking, the artificial brain, if you will, of the kinetic camera. Is it has predisposed and preset information in it to work in conjunction with different games. So I don't know 100% for sure, but I would definitely say, to your point, there's got to be some sort of predisposed or pre-programmed information that would allow this camera, because it's always going to have a CGI or an artificial character and a physical character. So it's going to have these points in place for the CGI opponent, if you will, and then it's going to try and map out. That's why you usually only see one or two things mapped out. And I would imagine that this chip or brain would, without having a game to tell it, okay, this is what you have to do, it's just going to sit there seeking. Because that's what the kinetic camera is designed to do. It searches and searches and searches. So that's a good question. Is I would say for sure it's got to have some pre-installed programming that is going to make it do that. And the big question is, how is this scientific when the device itself is so ridiculously subjective? Like, don't get me wrong, I think it's an awesome idea.
Yes.
And I think if it were projected over top of a, full figured apparition, well, then that would be the perfect what's the word I'm looking for? The proof of okay, well, it's mapping out a spirit, because obviously, that was a ghost. But
well, and that's kind of one of my things on it is not that the shows are entertainment. Nobody's going to argue that. They are made for entertainment.
Yeah.
But they're using this equipment and they're getting all these responses on this structured light sensor camera. But they're doing absolutely nothing to try to validate that response.
Right.
Like, to me, if I'm holding an SLS camera, the next point I'm going to bring up after this is going to tell you why we don't have one. If I was holding one and Les and I are investigating, and I'm saying, Les, look, over there, say we're in Les's room that you guys can see kind of behind him. Back there where Bigfoot is on that throw blanket.
That is a handmade quilt by my mother-in-law, who so lovingly stitched every little piece just for me for my birthday, and I absolutely love it. I had to throw that little prop out there for her.
It's beautiful, actually. I like it too.
It's beautiful.
But say it's mapping a ghost in that area, or a stick figure, a potential spirit. I know between Les and I, one of us, the opposite one that's not holding the camera, would be going over there with other equipment, a meter, some piece of equipment that would be building up other data for us to validate or debunk what this camera is doing.
A K2 or something.
Yeah, you would try to verify your results. We get an EVP, we try to debunk the EVP. We get a spirit box response, we try to debunk it. Oh, we got a stick figure on this camera. We did absolutely nothing, but here's the stick figure that we got on the camera.
Right, and it's usually, dude, look, oh my God, there's a body over there. Oh, dude, it's mapping something out.
Yeah.
Well, go do something about it.
I think this is one thing that you and I had talked about in the original discussion was, if you're presented with a piece of equipment as a group and they tell you all the science behind it and why it works, and every time you have a question, they have an answer. Well, what is it really doing when it does this? Oh, well, it's a scientific formula that it's an algorithm that is pulling the temperature, the light, the light settings, the this and that, and it's giving you this mapping. Oh, okay. And then you ask another question, and all of a sudden they have another answer. And then you take this piece of equipment out in the field and you break it out because it's a new piece of equipment. We all know you get something new, you want to play with it.
Oh, yeah.
You may play with it for 5 minutes or you may play with it the rest of your life. But you want to use it. So all of a sudden you're out there, you break it out, you start, all of a sudden you're mapping, ghosts in a room where you've been told there's, been sightings of ghosts, and you're mapping a figure in that same corner and da-da-da-da-da. Could you be blind to the fact of, A, it is a computer. Um, tablets, your laptop, your cell phone, they all have GPS.
Mm-hmm.
In some shape, way, or form, they all have GPS. They're places you go to ghost hunt that are on maps, that people have used a map on their website, Google Maps. This is the address here, and they put a little point there, and it says, Penhurst Asylum or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now this device is reading, oh, your longitude and latitude puts you in this building.
Mm-hmm.
So now the algorithm is tripped to start creating more and more responses because you're allegedly in a haunted location.
Exactly.
Now,
so is it predisposed? It's predisposed to seek that out, and more or less, like we said before, for as the novelty effect on it, it's set up so when you're in a given situation or a given coordinate, it says, okay, I'm in Penhurst. I know this is a haunted spot, so I'm going to start pointing out this. And with all the shows and all the information out there that is, living for these certain spots, and there's so many of them nowadays, it's very easy to seek them out and pre-program this information. So, all right, well, I know the one story at Penhurst is just I think Penhurst has the death tunnel or something like that, and they'll say, okay, well, hey, it's the death tunnel. Like, when you died, where did you go? Like now this is getting a little bit off track, but let's say they had the ovilus. It's a word bank again, but it's still, there's a microphone on it. There's a little bit of a brain in there, and again, like you said, adding the GPS information or technology into these devices is a simple script into the brain of that thing. And so you're like, well, when you died, where did you go? Tunnel. Oh my God, it said tunnel. How would it know that? Exactly, like you said.
Let's save that because I want to talk about the experiment I did this past week a little bit later in the show, though.
Okay.
One of the things, people say, oh, well, if you don't believe it works, why don't you get one and test it? Have somebody, look at the code and look at this. Well, let me explain to you. The number one manufacturer of this type of camera charges you $1,275 for the camera tablet software hand grip and a hard shell weather resistant carrying case. And they also make them in limited numbers, and they are currently out of stock.
Right.
Also, I don't know how to read code. So inside that algorithm that they have produced, I don't know how to read code. I don't know how, to decipher code. I'm sure we may have a friend or two who could help with that, but also it's $1,275 to buy the device to then take it apart and try to figure out what it's doing.
Well, not only that, but just based off of the public information that you found on those cameras, knowing where they came from, is enough to tell me I'm not going to make that large of an investment on something that is 100% subjective and inconclusive when it collects information. So I wouldn't waste my time or money on it.
Well, let me add something here, folks. I just eBayed everything that goes basically what this kit is minus the software. Okay. You can buy a Kinect cam sensor system from anywhere from $19 to $79, depending on which model and which this and that and how old it is, working at $19. A used tablet, a Microsoft, Word, Microsoft-based tablet on eBay today for $44.99. Carrying case $20 and a handle another $20. You're looking at a piece of equipment that minus the software cost under $150 to make. They're selling it for $1,275.
Right. And honestly, like adding in a little bit of script that you could program into that thing to do exactly what you had said before about, all right, well, we're going to put in the GPS information. We're going to, tag these particular areas. All right, well, we're going to code in these specific words along with, other common phrases that you would, want to hear when you're out ghost hunting. I mean, it's very predictable. And that's very easily coded into these things. If it is being done, it's not as hard as people think. I mean, I work in the I guess you could say in the technology field, if you will, with the kind of business I do with web design and all that stuff, and the principles are very similar. Like the stuff that you could do in a website with just simple script is insane. The things that you could seek out and search out, and you could do, with the GPS kind of stuff, when, with anything could be done very easily. Shit, you could probably Google that, and say, all right, well, how do I script, specific GPS locations, for this kind of a device. Yeah. So you get the tablet, it's already pre-programmed, it's already set up. It already has the factory application to run the camera, because you need that app to run the camera, right? So you need that app that's programmed. See, that alone, I'm not wasting my money, because the best tools are the ones that we use constantly. They're the old go-tos. They're the ones that have been used for decades. A still camera, a video camera. I mean, it with or without night vision. I mean, the night vision just makes life easier for viewing in dark areas. But still, it's a video camera. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing like you point it, you hit record, and what you pick up is what you pick up. Yeah. And you're scrutinizing the evidence, not the device you're collecting it with.
Yeah. That's the whole thing with I think we're going to run back into this a lot, is actually Dave just figured out how to do that
right there. Thanks, Dave. Yeah. See, look at that. How long did that take you to find, Dave? What, a couple taps on the keyboard and a click of a mouse, I bet.
Yeah, so we're going to probably, on a lot of this stuff, we're going to come back to the same few points. It's a computer program, it's lines of code, and the reason nobody has seriously broke a lot of these things to figure out what's in them and what's doing this and what's doing that is the fact that they make the price 1 minute. It took them 1 minute to find out how to do that.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on that part of it, if I make it so expensive that only certain people buy it, they are not going to spend time taking it apart. To break it, take it apart, to break it down, to look at the coding and stuff like that. And it's probably all, protected and stuff like that, where you need special, passwords that get by this and that. So that's the main thing. Like I said, for under $150, you could create that, device. I'll be selling those for, $1,273 on our website from now on.
Yeah, Dave, you'll get a cut from that, buddy. Don't worry. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, Dave we'll just always have the GPS and one of the responses be Dave.
Yeah.
But so that just shows you there's definitely it's very subjective. And again, like you said and I've said, you're not interpreting the evidence collected. You're debunking or talking about the device and the application of the device and the coding of the device. Now, you had a device, Les, that you were kind of took the forefront on it, and were you and I were talking about today. What was that? The
GeoBox?
Yeah, GeoBox, Wonderbox. Was that something?
Well, there it goes. There's I guess different different ones. You have the Geo Box, which I think was the prototype version, the Wonder Box or Portal. They go by different names, and they have kind of different styles. Aesthetically, looking at these things, they're cool. They look like old, like turn of the century radio kind of things. They got the old like tube things. Go ahead.
Was this the kind of thing that we had seen at that one shop? Not to name the shop, but the one shop that we had went to, me, you, and Russ. Was this something similar to those devices?
Very similar.
Okay.
Very similar.
Yeah, they're like steampunk, cool looking.
Yeah. And they have like the tubes and all that stuff with like lit lights and like neon kind of effect on it and stuff like that. To me, immediately, and you, and Russ, as soon as we walked in, we saw it. And again, like you said, not knocking that shop. I won't mention the shop name because I really like the people. And again, they're not putting stuff out there just because they want to stuff, crap down your throat. They're putting it out there because they like to get feedback. Okay, this is something new. Try it out. Let us know what you think. Is it worthwhile? Do we need to pick some more up or not? It's just business. But the devices, the Geo Box, Wonder Box, the Portal kind of things. Again, and I'm not knocking Paranormal Lockdown, but Nick Groff uses them on that show. They're really cool. They got a real cool style to them. They look like something that a ghost hunter would use. They got all the lights and the bells and whistles, and they have a reverb on the voice that comes through. So it's kind of almost like a digital kind of effect to it. But as soon as we saw it, at the store, me, you, and Russ, immediately we're like, all right, well, it has a microphone, it has a speaker, it has a word bank. That thing's already set up so that way it's taking in what you're saying. So you're walking through and you inadvertently don't realize that as you're walking through a room or something like that, or a house or wherever you're investigating, you're talking to either the homeowner, the tour guide, your teammates, and you're talking about the room, you're talking about the story, you're asking questions. And these algorithms, like Chad had mentioned, they're taking that information, they're storing it, they're learning from it, they're comparing from their banks specific words. Excuse me, like you could be walking through and not even realize it, but you're like, oh yeah, we got to go to the one room. What was the guy's name up there that died in there? Steven, right? Yeah, Steven, yeah. Okay. Or Steve, right? So you go up in that room and you're like, is there anybody here? Well, the algorithm already picked up the word Steve, right? So it's going to go and get other variations of the name. So like it might say Steven, and you're like, oh, no way, dude! It said Steven. No way. How did it know that? Well, you're using a device that's preset to do these kind of things. It has specific things already built into it. So you can't sit there and say that I'm scientifically collecting information to prove, there's a spirit at this location, or there's there's some kind of a haunting, or this is a paranormal location, when you're using a device that is highly subjective or is working against you. At that point, it's not a true tool or device to use when you're in the field. It's a novelty. It's a game. It's a funsy.
Should I relay the experiment to everybody?
I don't even know what it is, so go ahead. I'm intrigued.
Oh, I thought I would have told you. Okay, so we all know that. Oh, good. Well, then,
surprise to me.
Be prepared to be wowed.
All right.
Yes, actually, that's
exactly
actually going to be.
Theory.
This is going to be something that's going to come up. So I took one of the phone apps, and I know they say on there they're for entertainment. I took the phone app. I had it on my phone. as somebody does paranormal investigations, we all see something and we end up downloading it to play with it just for funsies.
Exactly.
So I ran it and I just had the TV on and conversation going on around it, but not asking it questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I run it the first time. I get exactly 20 responses in a 30-minute window.
Right.
I go and I look at the responses and I take a minute and I wrote up 5 predictors. So what I was doing was I was betting the next time I run this sweep on this thing for 30 minutes, I'm going to find answers that correlate to these 5 questions.
Right.
I run it. A day later, same time of day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 24 hours passing between running it. 30-minute window, exactly 20 responses. Out of those original 5 predictors, I got 3 of the 5 correct. So I decide to write a bigger list of predictors. Now, each time I do this, I can still have the predictors that were incorrect on the first one, but I add other predictors. So basically, again, I'm betting that out of the next 20 responses in 30 minutes that I get, it's going to answer more of these questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I write the 10. I do it again. Exactly 20 responses. Probably fill out about 6 of those 10 predictors.
Okay.
Again, I'm running it in an environment where I'm not directly asking questions. Just running it with background noise, and I'm logging down to the commercials that pop up while you're using it. So I have all this data collection. I can tell you that on a certain sweep at a certain time of day, it runs every 3 minutes, it runs a commercial.
Okay.
Other times a day, it runs a 3 to 5 minute pattern.
Okay.
But exactly 20 responses per 30 minutes.
Okay.
By the last time I run it, I've run it 5 times so far. By the last time I've ran it, it's basically, I keep adding to the list of predictors. It keeps answering a larger percent of the predictors than it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But all the answers that aren't even fitting the predictors, I actually made a generalized statement on this experiment, was the fact that all the answers are referring to commonly asked questions when you do paranormal investigations. Mm-hmm. Where did you die? Under the table. In a cell. It's been run, and I've actually run this pretty well controlled, where I've run it in the exact same spot at different times of day and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. At certain times of day, depending on the, as it gets later, the responses get spookier. Mm-hmm. One of the predictors I had was it will always give you some kind of religious reference. Uh-huh. Well, during the day, it'll give you stuff like scripture, Bible, angel, positive responses. Yeah. As the evening goes on, you start to get devil, hell, fire, damnation. So it's an algorithm, yes. Mm-hmm. My point on it was, if I can write an algorithm that'll fit on your phone to do this, mm-hmm. it would be very easy for the same people to write an algorithm to work in conjunction with any piece of, audio or video capture system.
Right, right.
But I continue this experiment just because at this point, I think I'm addicted to seeing what it says. But also, one of the things that we had talked about was Les and I had, visited. Yes, Matt, all good things in your book. I got you. Les and I had visited the Confederate graveyard in Lynchburg. Mm-hmm. And for funsies, I took out my phone. I turned on this app. Now we're standing in a protected area that shows up on maps, that has government funding. And of course, I'm using my phone. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm standing there, and the only response it gets is shot. Well, how did a large percentage of the soldiers in that Confederate cemetery die?
They were shot.
Between diseases and being shot. So either one of those answers to me would have been basically predictable from just my location.
Right.
It doesn't take a lot for it to, realize, okay, I'm going to read your location. It's Siri, Siri and Alexa and all those devices are built on the principle of what are they doing? They're listening for you to say, Alexa, turn on the oven if you have the oven hooked up to Alexa in the system.
Right.
Or Alexa, find me this. Or hey, Siri. Wanted to make sure my phone just did do that, but I have her turned off. They're made to listen for your commands. So therefore, if they know, like Les and I are driving around the cemetery and I'm saying, hey, I'm pretty sure the Confederate part of the cemetery is down here, and there's a disease house, the pestilence house, that's actually a museum that's there in the cemetery. It's hearing that stuff. Mm-hmm. One of the predictors that, or one of the things that came up on the app was I had been searching about the cameras. Right. And searching different websites and stuff like that and talking about the cameras. Well, one of the responses of on the app is camera. Mm-hmm. Well, I just spent all day searching information on cameras.
Right.
So why would it say camera? It wasn't asked a question.
Right. Well, kind of same rule applies. I saw an experiment that was done, not paranormal wise, but a dude set his phone down, he and his girlfriend, and they just sat there for I don't know how many hours, and they were just everything that they said, they're just like cat, 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 cat. They just kept saying cat mm-hmm. over and over, and including the word in everything. Then, and their phone wasn't on, like it was on, but it wasn't active. Like they didn't have the screen open. It was silent or just in holding or whatever you want to call it, I guess, when it's not active. But it's still listening. It's still, waiting to be used. Mm-hmm. So they're sitting there, they're talking. Then next thing you know, they go on Facebook and the advertising was for cat food. Mm-hmm. They go on the internet. They go checking out stuff on the web on their phone. All the ads that pop up, cat litter, cat food, cat mm-hmm. this. The phone is still listening to you as you're, whether you're using it or not, it's always listening, and it's always going to try and shop you or, mm-hmm. and like you said, I mean, it did. When we were down at that cemetery, I don't even think it needed to really even hear us say anything necessarily. Yeah. I think it was more or less the, it was the GPS. I mean, we were in a Civil War mm-hmm. cemetery, a national cemetery, and that's all it needed. You know what I mean? And I mean, maybe it did listen in, like you said, maybe it did listen in for specifics, but I mean, really, those things have the word banks. All it had to do was filter through anything to do with war, and you know what I mean? And boom, there you have it.
Well, it's like there was a restaurant that opened up that my friend and I from work would go to lunch at like pretty much every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, our phones started telling us the distance that we were from the restaurant.
Right.
Never GPS the restaurant. It was right down the street from our office.
Right.
We never had a GPS the address or anything. We would be 30 miles away, and you know, when you flip your phone and it's that screen and it gives you all your data information and stuff like that, it would say, you are 30 miles from the Oakley Mart.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we didn't even know the place, you know, at that point had any kind of online, you know, traffic that it, you know, would know what that residence was.
Right.
But it would just, it started pulling that address every day. Like it pulls your home and realizes it spends most of its time here, so it must be home.
Yeah. And it knows how often you frequent that restaurant.
Yeah.
It didn't need anything from the restaurant.
No, it just
tracked you going there all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I always, to your point, exactly the same thing. I'm always back and forth between the grocery store and home.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go in, like on my way, exactly like you said. My phone will be sitting on the console next to me, and I'll hear it chime. I look down, it says, it's 7 miles and 15 minutes, no traffic to Walmart. I'm like, how the fuck did that thing know I'm going to Walmart, you know?
Yeah.
So then I get to Walmart, and I'm walking around, I get out in the car, and I get in my car, and it says, it's 15 minutes to home, and traffic is clear, and blah, blah, blah. I'll be sitting at home, and because I have my car connected to my phone, I'll get an alert. Your car is parked at home and is safe.
That would creep me out.
Yeah, no, I get that all. It's like, your car's parked at home and it's safe. I'm like, Jesus. Ah, yes, good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's again with technology. Dave posts that information is easily spoofed too. Look at what Russia does by the Kremlin. The GPS by the Kremlin will tell you that you are by the airport and not where they don't want you to be or whatever. And that's true too, especially for, like, I guess, protected areas. But it is so interesting and yet frightening. And all it is, it's a tiny little device that we carry and take for granted so easily. And I mean, for such a small device, and people could think, how are you going to put that much technology into one of these, hokey ghosts? It is so easy.
Yeah,
so
I mean, you basically can download it on your phone, and it takes up very little space, and it's hokey and it's a toy.
Yeah,
but if somebody can code it onto a format that fits my phone, what says they can't bury it in a, whatever app, program would be for one of these devices, that they couldn't bury pieces of it throughout the code and it pops up when it needs to. And again, the apps on the phone are just for entertainment. They say on there they're for entertainment. You will see people break them out at times and try to say, look, I got all these responses. And I've been able to prove that there's an algorithm and been able to write predictors, to the fact of what the question and answer, without questions, what the answers would be. Now, if I was sitting there asking the questions that fit the predictors, it's a little bit different, but I didn't ask any questions. I just left it run. And it's generating the exact same number of responses in a 30-minute window.
Right.
Now, that may change from day to day.
With the Ouija board, dude, I have a custom-made Ouija board from a witch in Salem with a hand-carved pendulum and everything, man, or pointer. It's pretty wicked, but
I have a Ouija board table that I started making about 5 years ago.
I remember that. Yeah. You never.
I've I start on it one day and I do a little bit with it and then I stop. And it sits for a year. And
you know what? I shared something on Facebook that I think you would find very, very interesting to do your project. And remind me after the show, and I'll tell you about it.
Okay.
On how to do it. But I'm gonna divert here from our primary topic for 1 second. Paul, I stopped playing with those things ever since way back in the day. Me and Jason Reed and a bunch of our friends were up at the old Memorial Building in Orgsburg playing with a Ouija board. I was sitting on the left. Jason was on the right. He had the board on one leg. I had it on my other leg. We're asking questions, trying to get it to work. Nothing's happening. We were bored. We started taking it for granted. We started talking crap, whatever. And we're sitting there. And all of a sudden, we're like, "All right, this is lame. The Ouija, this board's shit. You know, we're let's get out of here." Blah blah blah. And then next thing you know, the pointer flies off the board, and this is no lie. Jason and I were perfectly still, and we're just talking. We're just sitting there. All of a sudden, the freaking pointer and the board fly off of our laps, and we jump up. We're like, "What the hell?" We're all kind of freaked and stuff. We put the board on the bench that we were sitting on. We're looking everywhere for the pointer. We couldn't find it. Can't find it. We're all over the place. Looked under the bench. Looked back by. This is when the Memorial Building had the chain link basketball courts there, and we were on the bench in front of it, outside of it. We're looking all around. Couldn't find the pointer anywhere. We were just about ready to give up, and we're all walking back to the bench because we had set the board on the bench. We're all, we're walking around, and we were all together, so I know it wasn't somebody who ran back. We go back. The freaking pointer is sitting on the board, on the bench. We grabbed it. We put the pointer to goodbye. We wiped the board. Yeah, remember? And we left. I never played with them ever since then. I have a custom made one. It's in a cloth bag, kind of. I won't use it. I have it because it looks cool, but I won't use it. And that's it. That's all I have on that story. That's my little side note. I have so many stories about the Ouija board, but I'll save that for another show.
Yeah, I think Ouija boards are. I think it is what you make of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm telling you though, what happened that night, and you know me, I'm not going to lie about something like this because we devote a lot of time into this, and we devote a lot of time into seeking the truth. And I'm not gonna lie about it. To the best of my knowledge, what happened that night was beyond anything I could rationalize.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, here's the thing: if you're doing any kind of communication or trying to communicate, you're opening yourself up to something to communicate with you. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Ouija board itself matters because you've seen people draw them on cardboard and they work, or people write it on paper and it works.
Or that spectral writing when you open your mind or you channel yourself. Mm-hmm. I think the board is used almost more as a vessel, if you will, or
is it an evil vessel?
With laser beams attached to the pointer, yes.
Good,
but no, I think it's a start. It's a start. I think that, like you're saying, is you're kind of already in a heightened state at that point. Mm-hmm. So your mind is open. Your senses are open. You're scared. You don't know what's going to happen. You're on edge. So you're more prone to activity. And I think the board itself would be more of, like I said, the vessel or the communicator. Mm-hmm. So you're right. I don't think it's the board. The boards themselves aren't magic or supernatural. I think it's more the energy that's channeled into it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I've played with Ouija boards. I've seen weird things happen with Ouija boards, but I've also seen people play with a Ouija board and then something bad happens and blame it on playing with a Ouija board.
right.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of these like stories of, oh, the homeowner was playing with a Ouija board and then X, Y, and Z happened and they had to call us in to investigate. It's like, why does the Ouija board have anything to do with this? Like,
Right.
you know, a lot of things can be written off. Yeah, the thing moving on its own and stuff like that. It is what it is. You know, is there a reasonable explanation? Not for a thing flying.
I was going to say, but what happens when it literally projects itself off of you and,
Mhm.
for lack of better terms, disappears?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, like there are reasonable explanations, but there's also times where
You just don't
reason
know.
reason runs out.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just not a big fan of them personally. I just don't really. I slept with one under my bed as a child. Like through my teenage years, I was never possessed by a demon. Zozo never came and got me. Yeah, we played with them since we were little kids. My mom didn't really have a problem with us, like she bought them for us. But that's a whole different childhood issue. This isn't therapy. I'm sorry.
and we're digressing here. So let's get back to the topic at hand. So we were talking about yes, you do always have to debunk. That's the whole point of investigating, is to debunk the or to point out the obvious. Because Michelle, is it? Michelle. I hope I'm butchering your name. I'm sorry.
You hope you're butchering her name?
No, I don't hope. I'm saying I hope I'm getting that right, but I mixed that and I'm butchering. So apologize if I messed up your name. But you do have a good point there, is you always have to debunk, and that is 100% true. And that's kind of to our point, is you want to debunk the evidence, not the device or the tool you're using to collect that evidence. And that's what we're talking about with a lot of these new, quote, high-tech devices that are coming out in the market. And that's why we always like to stick with the standards. A digital voice recorder, it's recording it's in its surroundings, like voices, cars, wind. It's collecting the surroundings, and that's all it does. It's that simple. So when you get something that's out of the ordinary or inexplicable, where you're like, well, no, I specifically remember that didn't happen. And when we have EVP sessions, that's why we always have a video camera on us at all times, as well as another camera that's kind of just panning the room, if you will. So that way, if you hear an odd noise, you might see it happening, or if you do get like say a voice, and you're like, no, I swear nobody said that. Then you go back and you watch the video footage, and then you're like, oh no, I was wrong. Okay. Or you're like, see, nobody said it. So you kind of rely on those standard pieces of equipment. Like I said, the digital voice recorders, video recorders, still cameras. And like what we've been using a lot lately is trail cams for in areas, especially the places that we investigate that are really, really large, and you can't cover all of the areas, and you want to primarily focus on the hot spots per se. We set trail cams up everywhere just in case, and it's only going to be triggered by light and motion, and whatever trips the sensor. And we've been having a lot of good luck with them. Again, a K2 meter, its sole design is to pick up on electromagnetic frequencies. It's either there or it isn't. And that's why before we do any investigation, Chad and I usually will sweep the entire building if we can, or the residence, or wherever we are, for any kind of hot spots. So, you find a spot. All right, well, the K2 is always going off every time you go past there. Well, we find out, okay, well, there's some wires hidden back there, or there's old wiring, or there's this, or there's that, or it's close to the junction box that's right below you in the basement. So you go and you rule out the obvious. And, if people say, oh, whenever I'm in this corner or whatever, I always feel so weird. I feel these weird feelings. Well, you get the K2, oh, we're getting some readings here. And then you go into it a little bit further and you realize, oh, well, that chair is right above, a big power source in the basement. So it's not necessarily a supernatural thing. It's, you're having a reaction to
EMF.
The electricity, or the magnetic field that's going on there. So you use these devices to point out the obvious more so than to find a ghost, if you will. But when you can't rule out the obvious, that's where it gets interesting. And again, like we're talking about the Geobox, the Wonder Box, the portals, even the Ovilus. Now, don't get me wrong. That's one tool that I would love to tinker around with. I really would like to play with it, to run tests like what Chad was saying. See if it starts recognizing certain words or conversations. See if it starts picking things up. Have it in a controlled environment to test it out. And if it's like, well, it's not picking up on any of these things, and you tested it in multiple ways, 3-4 different ways, and it's not picking up on anything, well, then that would kind of interest me to be like, all right, well, I want to use this in the field and I want to see what it comes up with. And then maybe I'd feel a little bit more comfortable on the validity of that device. But again, it's one of those things where I'd love to have it, but to find one of the decent ones, they're rare, first of all, and they're not cheap. And I don't know if I want to invest a lot of money in a device that I end up being like, it's kind of a piece of crap. So I could always try and resell it and hope I recoup my money, but I don't want to take that gamble. I'm not a gambling man. But so that kind of takes us to the next topic, phone apps. And again, it's basically all in the same realm.
Well, I think we kind of killed the phone app with the my little experiment.
Yeah. And the thing that gets me is, you have an Ovilus 3. Have you had luck with it, Ron? I mean, obviously you love it, so you must be. Have you tried testing it in controlled environments? I'll wait for him. Just say no to apps. Yes, exactly. The thing that got me is there's a restaurant in a town near me in Jim Thorpe, and through the grapevine, I'm always approached by people with anything paranormal or cryptozoological and so on and so forth. Well, there is a restaurant that had a pretty interesting history, and some groups had gone in and investigated this place, and I was really interested in it. And I don't know if I came across as kind of, forgive me, but maybe I came across as an uppity asshole. I was in and I was talking, yeah, they are programmed not to film Bigfoot, that's for sure. But I will still try, Joyce. I will still try to film them. But anyway, I was in this restaurant and I was talking to the restaurant owner, and she was going on and on about some of the activity, and I really wanted to get my group in there, and I made the mistake. She was telling me about a group that was in there, and she was talking about some of the evidence, and she started talking about some of the photography. Well, I've been in photography for many, many years, and I know a thing or two about it. And some of the stuff that she was presenting to me, I was able to explain what it probably was. But she had it in her heart so strongly that it was paranormal. She didn't want to hear any more from me, and I think that was the beginning of the bitter taste in her mouth. And then she was saying, you know, she was like, "Oh well, I know about this the history of the ghost because I have this name, this name, this name." I said, "Oh, that's fantastic." I said, "How did you get that? Did you go to, you know, the recorder, the town records? Did you, you know, look up any kind of historical information on the building?" I said, "Do you have documentation?" Blah blah. She's like, "Well, no, the group told me." I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, did they seek all that out?" No, they have an app. I said, "What, like a history app or like what app are you talking about?" And she's like, "No, it's a ghost hunting app, and the app said these names." I'm like, "Oh, it